Now, the White House has denied media reports that Israel, the US and Hamas have reached a deal to release dozens of captives in Gaza in exchange for a pause in fighting. Well, for more on this, let's go to our correspondent in Washington, D.C., John Holman. So, John, almost immediately after the Washington Post broke this news about a potential hostage deal, the White House came out and denied it. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, we've obviously put our own requests into the White House and also to the US State Department for comment on this, and they haven't got back to us yet. This is a general denial, obviously, from a White House spokesperson, and it comes, as you say, just after the Washington Post reported that there wasn't a deal, but there was close to a deal that was being mediated, they said, by Qatari officials between Hamas and Israel, with the US's participation, in which there would be more than 50 captives, women and children, that would be freed in exchange for a five-day ceasefire with the Israeli troops that are in Gaza, and obviously the airstrikes. So that's what the White House is denying. A similar deal to this, it's not the first time that it's been reported. Media reports also surfaced more than a week ago, also talking about a possible five-day ceasefire in exchange for the release of captives. So this is something, in terms of captive release, that's been negotiated, and something has been tried to be struck over several weeks now, and it seems for a moment that we might be getting close. What is certain is that there's an increase in the pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to get some sort of deal done. There's been a five-day walk by the families of hostages from Tel Aviv to his Jerusalem residence to try and put more pressure on him. There's thought to be more than 200 captives in Gaza that were taken from Israel on the 7th of October, when Hamas launched their attack on Israel. So whether this deal is close to be getting done, or, as the White House now says, is not being done, there's definitely still significant pressure, especially within Israel, to do something.
And also, John, in the Washington Post, we've had an op-ed written by President Joe Biden just in the past few hours talking about the war on Gaza. Who was that aimed at?
I think that would have been aimed as much for domestic consumption here within the United States as it would perhaps people in Israel, Gaza, the occupied territories over in the Middle East. It talked about an eventual solution. It talked about what would happen after the war in Gaza. And President Joe Biden was talking about a two-state solution. He was also talking about the Palestinian Authority governing Gaza, as well as the occupied West Bank, which it currently governs. There's several problems with that. One, whether the people in Gaza would want that. There wasn't mention of an election in President Joe Biden's op-ed, and one whether Israel also would allow it. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that in its current form he wouldn't want the Palestinian Authority. He wouldn't see that as an option, that they were governing Gaza. But definitely within the United States, within President Biden's administration and other governmental agencies, there's been increasing resistance to the US's support that some have seen as unqualified for Israel as it launches this invasion within Gaza. There's been a letter that more than 500 people have said they're in agreement with, anonymously, saying that they didn't support the US's support for Israel. Members of governmental agencies, also a letter with more than 100 people the other way, saying that they did support President Biden's support for Israel. So this is obviously something that's dividing the United States right now, and President Joe Biden's op-ed was meant to clarify that, have some sympathy for the plights of the Palestinians, but also set forth what he sees as the future there for Gaza.
John Holman bringing us the latest there from Washington, D.C. Thanks very much, John.